What's going on, world? What's going on, cigar enthusiasts? This is Jack the Cigar Enthusiast, and I'm back with another video. And today we're talking about how to determine if you bought a fake Cohiba. With that being said, strap in, buckle up, and let's go.
Pull up in motor cat.
With the lack of knowledge and lack of understanding of what a real Cuban is, then it's really hard for you not to fall up in that trap of buying fake Cohibas. Fake Cohibas are everywhere overseas, and majority of times, especially when you go on a cruise, when you get off the airplane, there's people vending those fake Cubans right there in front of you. So you naturally think, well, I'm overseas and I'm on vacation. What better way to have an actual Cohiba, which is one of the most famous cigars on the market when it comes to the Cuban market. Now, understanding Cohiba for a little bit, Cohiba initially started making the production of their cigars back in the 60s and really didn't launch to the 80s where they started actually retailing these cigars. But let's take it a step further. If you remember back in Why Cuban, I specifically talked Cuba was founded by Christopher Columbus and his sailors. When they determined that they got to this island, they'd seen that everybody was rolling, again, what we determine now is the cigar, and they realized that over there it was very, very rich tobacco and very well grown tobacco. So therefore Cuba really became the central hub for what a perfect cigar typically looks like. Now, Cohiba is really a landmark in the actual cigar industry. Cohiba is really the foundation of cigars and where everybody typically wants to get their cigar to smoke like. Understanding what to look for when buying a Cuban is very dynamic, and it's something that you need to understand prior to just throwing your money out there for a cigar. Now, understanding this, price point is a very keen indicator of a real Cohiba versus a fake Cohiba. I'm gonna be honest with you, not too many Cohibas out there is going to cost you $20. A lot of them are $35, $40, $45, $50 per cigar. This is why it is a luxury cigar. But today we're using the Ciganello 5 Cohiba, which displays the old band of Cohiba. There's a range of 5 different types of Ciganellos that go from 1 to 5, and they're always presented in these nice little cases. So if they don't have this nice little case, but they have this old wrapper, that is probably a key indicator that you have a fake Cuban. Not only that, we're going to dive straight into really understanding this wrapper, but also understanding the new wrapper as well, because that is the wrapper that you would theoretically see on the market, and those are very easy to spot when looking at counterfeit cigars. Now, understanding the new band was started in 2014 when the old band was discontinued. Why? Because it really helps during the determining factors of if you have a real Cohiba or a counterfeit Cohiba. There is a lot of things in place that only the makers of the actual cigar band, which is in the Netherlands, are actually able to produce. Today we're using, like I said, the Ciganello 5. Take this cigar. We're gonna flip it over. Right here, you'll see that there is the connection between the bands, right? Those connections on all Cohiba bands, no matter if it's an old one or a new one, are perfectly aligned. I mean, perfectly aligned. And when you actually touch the wrapper, you should not be able to move that wrapper at all. Cohiba has really been diverse with that because they seal the bands perfect and just enough on the cigar to where it does not move. So that is another key indicator. Now you see right here, there is a row of squares. On the old bands, there is 5 rows of squares that continue around the entirety of the cigar. Now, obviously, when you get to the Cohiba part, there is 3 rows of squares, and that is it. And then as you continue around, it goes back to 5, and then it meets right in the middle. Now, let's take a step further, looking at the actual Cohiba, right? The Cohiba has a very gold and metallic and bold color on it. But when you touch the Cohiba, as you run your finger across, it should feel rigid, which means that it's an embossed lettering that Cohiba has adapted to really signify their cigars. Now, if you run your finger across and you don't feel any ridges and it just feels smooth, that is not an embossed lettering, and that is 9 times out of 10 a fake cigar. Now, let's get here. That gold band right here, it says Habana Cuba. Habana Cuba. Now, back in the beginning of the cigars, when they had the dots that went to squares and Cohiba that went to the gold lettering, they used to have on there La Habana Cuba, which stands for Havana, Cuba. Fake cigars, it'll say Habana Cuba or Havana this. That is not a real cigar, and those would never be words displayed on an actual Cohiba. Right here, you see the C? The C does not overlap itself. It does not overlap itself, but it's also perfectly aligned tip by tip. See on fake Cubans, that C will also overlap or underlap, which means that it won't even be perfectly aligned. Here on the cap, 1, 2, 3. Those are a triple cap that every Cohiba has, which is a key indicator if it's a real Cuban or not. And then you come here to the actual cigar, and you'll notice that obviously it has veins. Every cigar has veins, but their veins on Cohibas are very faint. It means they have perfectly wrapped and compose this cigar in a magnificent way that it doesn't even display signs of an actual leaf or anything being rolled up in the new Cohiba wrapper. The first key indicator for a new band is the hologram or the Taino Indian head in the middle. Inside that Taino head is also a smaller Taino head, which the whole entire Taino head is a hologram, and in the back of that it has very rigid hologram effects on the cigar that you spot with even second guessing. Now, the Taino head represents the Indian tribe that founded tobacco. The Cohiba, the word Cohiba, Taino language stands for tobacco. Taino head is a really key indicator. The tops and the bottoms of the actual wrappers, those have the Taino head with Cuba repeated along each other and repeated at the bottom along each other. So it'll have the Taino head, it'll have Cuba in a very hologram element to where you can spot that dead on and there's no confusion that that is a authentic Cuban cigar. Now, the next thing is the squares. Everything about Cohiba is dynamic behind those squares. There is 9 squares versus 5 squares that continue on in a dead smack row all the way to the end. There should be 9 squares, not 10, not 8, not 6, not 7. Should be 9 squares on it. And again, make sure you flip that cigar around, and if the tops of the cigars do not meet perfect, that is another indication that you have a fake cigar. Gold lettering Cohiba is a rigid surface with embossed letterings, which means that as you swipe your hand through it, you should feel bumps along the way. Now, let's get to the Habana Cuba. This is something that still remains the same as in the actual old style, but the Habana in there is centered below the Cohiba, and it spells out Habana, not Havana, and it's a very distinct font pattern that can't be replaced. The C, again, does not overlap each other, right? It's pretty much point to point and really is dynamic and a key indicator to look at it. Now, understanding the new brand is very, very close related to the old brand. So even the things on the cigars you can pinpoint and really see as a determining factor on the cigar. The tips, making sure the tip of the cigar where the cap is has 3 lines. It's 3 lines, which means that the leaf went around 3 times on the actual cap before it was sealed. Now get to the footer. The footer should be a straight flesh cut, and the veins of the cigar should be very, very minute. Shouldn't be bold. They shouldn't be thick. there's something that you should be able to see. I hope this video really helps you get a more dynamic and key understanding of a fake Cohiba and a real Cohiba. With that being said, if you haven't already, subscribe, share, and like. So follow me at the links below on Facebook and Instagram for all up-to-date content as information on when we plan to launch the website for thesecigars.com. With that being said, this is Jack the Cigar Enthusiast, and I'm gone.